Welcome to the Portland Real Estate Podcast, Oregon and Southwest Washington's #1 show for real estate news and information. Without further ado, here are your hosts and a couple of guys who, as busy realtors and successful brokerage owners, know a thing or two about real estate. Steve Nassar of Premier Property Group and Joe Festolo of Soldera Properties.
We have Kurt von Wasmuth with us, President and CEO of RMLS, one of our biggest advocates, brilliant person, great guest on the podcast, and really excited that you're here again with us. This is probably the third or fourth time, and you just got back from DC where you had lots of discussions on exactly what we're going to be talking about. But before we jump in, how you doing, Steve?
I'm good. I'm sorry to our faithful audience. I noticed there was a couple comments on Masters asking where we were because we showed up about 15 minutes late. We were having some technical issues sending it live into the Facebook group, Masters in Real Estate. We were trying to hack our way back onto just Joe's page, my page, and all of a sudden the opportunity came on to do so. So we are here. We're just a couple minutes late, but we're all here. We got one of our favorite guests, if not our most favorite guest. I think it's his third time, maybe more. And he's a natural podcaster. He's got a microphone. He's got his own podcast, and he's one of the few that we never need to prep. We never need to send him questions or rehearse or even be ready. We just know he's got the gift of gab and the magic microphone, and he's ready to go. And he's got a wealth of knowledge that all of us are dying to hear about with regards to a lot of stuff changing in our industry this summer. Sounds like later in the summer than it was originally slated to be. So welcome, Kurt.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience with us.
Oh, absolutely. I understand how it is. This happens to us all the time.
That makes us feel better.
Yeah.
Or maybe it doesn't because you're running RMLS.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is as long as you don't notice, it's fine. There's problems all the time. As long as you don't see them, I'm fine with that.
Yep. Tell us what's going on in your world. I mean, you like the rest of us woke up, one Friday morning a few months back and saw some massive changes agreed to in our industry. How have things unraveled since then? I would assume you're talking to other MLSs and others, powers that be, and you're all trying to wrap your heads around stuff. What's that looking like?
I am a member of MLS Aligned, of which we work very closely with those 6 other MLSs. We're also a member of the Cove Group, which is the 21 most influential MLSs in the country. And everyone started meeting immediately. There were emails flying all over the place. We had video meetings. We met in person. And it's amazing to me how quickly this industry can adapt. Like I've seen it over and over and over again. I watched MLSs and real estate agents adapt to the internet when I first got here. We all adapted to the myriad of rule changes. And now we've got this mess. And I got news for you. There are some really creative people out there coming up with some really creative answers that scare me to death. But the world changed overnight. In essence, the Department of Justice and the National Association of Realtors have come to a settlement in which the MLSs can no longer have anything to do with compensation.
For buyers, yeah.
Our core at all.
Well, I guess at that matter, I mean, yeah, it wouldn't have anything to do with listing agents. So yeah.
And so since MLSs were born in the 1800s, it was always under the guise of we guarantee compensation for cooperation. And we now don't do that. We no longer guarantee compensation. That's entirely up to our subscribers to negotiate when they're working with buyers, to negotiate that with their clients, much like the listing agents do. At its core, that's the biggest change. And then sort of supplementary to that, I would say ancillary to that, we also have been put in charge of making sure that our subscribers have written buyer broker agreements when working with buyers.
That's a whole conversation, by the
Isn't
way.
it? Yeah.
I asked that to Jeff Wyron at our last company sales meeting because my understanding is he went to Washington, D.C., and you were there as well. And my understanding was that Zillow presented their touring contract, which is an agreement that says, hey, Mr. Buyer, you are giving me permission to tour you around for 7 days. With no mention of compensation, by the way. No mention of compensation, which kind of doesn't go with the spirit of what this new settlement has been, which is, hey, transparency, you're compensating me X, I'm helping you as a buyer. And it sounded, from what I heard from Jeff Wyron, like the room didn't like that. They're like, what are you doing? This isn't the spirit of what the agreement is meant to be. And my question to Jeff was, well, then who polices this? Like, who's the you aren't doing it right police? And he said it's the MLSs. And that was a surprise to me, I guess, in some ways. But I mean, it also, in some other ways, makes sense because you guys do police various things in our world. So that sounds fun.
Yeah, look, I got news for you. That announcement that MLSs were in charge of enforcing that was met to the tune of about 900 MLSs saying, what? Like, I don't, if you are heading out and you're showing a buyer a house, I don't know that. I don't know who your buyer is. I don't know the relationship. And so, we've had to become a little bit, I would say, creative. We're doing a little bit of guesswork. So our approach at RMLS, and this is not every MLS's approach, but our approach at MLS is that we are fortunate in that we do own showings, aligned showings. So we will have a checkbox on there. When you go to set up a showing, we will have a checkbox that says, I assert by checking this checkbox that I have a buyer broker agreement, a written agreement with my buyer. And we will probably have some other language inside of RMLS Web, say maybe when you set up auto email or something that says, I understand I'm supposed to have a buyer broker agreement. But to be perfectly honest, if you don't, how would I know? The only way I would know is if you stop working with that buyer and they squeal on you to another subscriber of RMLS, and then that subscriber calls me, and then I have to call Agent One back and say, hey, you remember, you're supposed to have a buyer broker agreement. I'm not sure how the logistics of all that work out. I'm not sure how many calls that's going to lead to. I'm not sure how much squealing there's going to be. But then again, how could I be? None of us have ever done this before. So this is all new to all of us.
And this announcement is coming out, what, in August, or did it get pushed out further?
So originally we had until September because of the settlement. And then a few weeks after that, NAR announced you don't have until September, you have until August 17th. And we plan on starting communications about it right away. But we plan on actually starting our changes in early August. And we hope to be finished with our changes, at least with the system, right around a week ahead of time, maybe 2 weeks ahead of time, just to give ourselves time to react should anything go wonky. Because we have a lot of things we need to take into account on the back end. Like, yeah, we have to remove compensation fields from the MLS. Well, that's easy. That's a piece of cake. But what people don't think about is we also have thousands of vendors out there who are pulling data from us, and we have to make sure that that's a clean handoff. Like, we can't just remove fields from a data feed because that breaks stuff. So we have to start working on this now to make sure that everyone understands what's happening and when it's happening.
Have you heard the conspiracy theory that removing the BAC from RMLS, there's two things that have happened. One is just the fact that you're a member of RMLS, you're in RMLS, you know that if you show a house, whatever the BAC is posted, that's guaranteed what you're going to get as a percentage of the sale price. It's the contract we all sign. And so that is removed, as well as they say that compensation can come from people who aren't part of MLS. And there's a conspiracy that, big 800-pound gorilla, Zillow and Redfin, and the people that spend lots and lots of money on amazing websites are trying to lessen the importance of MLSs and trying to drive everyone to them. Have you heard that? Do you think there's any truth to it?
I don't. I haven't heard any support from any of those companies for these changes. Not that they call me and tell me what they support, but we would know. Also, although this does feel like it lessens the role of the MLS, there isn't a clear bridge between these actions and anything else filling that gap at this point. So, for instance, the reason that I say that is in order for RMLS to be covered, by the way, we are a realtor-owned MLS, and therefore we are covered by the settlement as long as I sign this thing, which is called Appendix B. And Appendix B asserts that if there's any knowledge of any compensation being displayed on any website, it cannot contain MLS information. So the minute someone starts sharing compensation through any web mechanism, I have to pull the data feed there. And that makes any sort of compilation of data almost impossible at this point. Now, that's one of 9 different assertions that we have to make, and they've done a pretty good job locking that down. Like, the only exception to that, as I understand it, and I'm learning this with everyone else, is that both of you have a data feed for your own personal websites. You can put your percentages on your listings if you want, yours only. But the minute you put someone else's percentage, like whatever they're offering, on their listing, then I have to cut the data feed. And that's a weird change to this world. That's not how things used to work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm of the opinion this isn't a change we can fight. For example, I was in a mastermind group last week, and somebody mentioned apparently there's third-party websites starting to pop up showing BACs, and I just didn't. I was like, I don't get that. That's not the way this is going to go forward. This isn't something that's going to just get hacked over here. This is a new world where we are going to go to our sellers. We're going to get our commission, and we're going to say, now when an offer comes in, you're going to decide what to do with that buyer's agent. And it's not going to be that set figure. People want it. They want to gravitate back to what's familiar and normal to them. But I think you're going to cause yourself more headaches trying to do that than just acknowledging that most sellers are going to be willing to pay a buyer's agent, especially if it's a negotiation. There might be a little back and forth. Ask for your percentage at a set price, and if they won't give it to you at that price, then maybe you got to convince your buyer to go up a little bit more, or work it out with your buyer, right? I mean,
yep.
Those are gonna be the options. But it's hard for me. The good news here is it's hard for me to imagine that there's going to be a seller that goes, nope, I'm not paying your agent. Yes, you want to sell your house. Right. You want to sell it this amount. Let's just build it on top of that. No different than we've done with closing costs or rate buy down concessions for many years now, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. I don't think this is Armageddon. I don't either. Apocalypse that some people want it to be. It's a big change. I get it. It's a big change, and it's going to take some time, and there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some problems. There's going to be things that maybe we haven't even thought of yet. But you're right. It's not something we can avoid. It's not something you can easily scam your way out of. And by the way, I've heard all of them. There's many ideas out there. I tell you what, gang, let's just end every list price with 2.7, and that'll mean we're offering 2.7%. And let's end it with 3.0 or 6.0 or whatever number.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do. Yeah. Look, man, the DOJ is watching. They've got all of these scams. They know exactly what's going on. And as I've told people many times, I've been doing panels and presentations around the state. And the DOJ has our phone number. It's not like they don't know who we are. Like they're watching. So we're not going to be playing any games. We're going to comply to the letter of the law in an attempt to show them that, yeah, we get it. The consumer should have more control over what they pay the buyer's agent. Fine, we'll play.
Well, I've said this before on other podcasts we've done about this, Kurt. You know, when I take my realtor hat off and I try to think of this through their lens, the consumer's lens, I get it. Like, why did I, as the seller, have to say upfront, I'm going to give X percentage, regardless of who you are, how good you are, or how much you kick my ass in that offer? It's going to be the same amount.
Right.
Now, because what that did do in hindsight, we didn't think it at the time, but in hindsight, now that we're looking at the new era and the old era, what it did do was it put the buyer's agent on the seller's against the seller. Now the seller is like, hey, I'm paying my guy. If you want me to pay you well, bring me a good offer.
Right.
And if your offer insults me, I can affect you.
Yeah, exactly.
You now go coach your buyer to be fair with me. Now, that's not to say everyone's going to overpay on houses, because if that seller's unreasonable, then they'll go find another house. There'll be another one, right? But it makes the buyer's agent need to play nice and bring a good offer. And if they don't, then the seller can negotiate accordingly. And it does make sense to me that is better for the consumer. I know it's different for us.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. When you take a step back and you actually allow yourself to be, relatively agnostic about it, it turns out, yeah, there was some wonkiness with the old system. It's not perfect. No system is perfect. There's even problems with this new system.
Yeah,
but that's okay. I think one of the things we have to do right now is be open, change as rapidly as possible, and then get ready to change again when we find new problems or there's other assertions.
Yeah.
Well, financially speaking, though, it wasn't broken before. Maybe it wasn't as transparent which was the entire lawsuit. But if you go through this whole motion and you reverse engineer it, where if the buyer has two options, chunk down 20%, pay for the inspections, pay for the loan origination fee, pay their half of the Alta. Oh, and then I'm going to owe my broker $25,000 at the end of this. Or you add $25,000 to the price and the seller covers it. Which would you choose? They're always going to go that way. I know that lenders are trying to somehow build in for commissions and take these things into account. But from a checks and balances standpoint, financially speaking, the seller, it comes out of their net. The buyer's the one that's coughing up all the money. And it could be managed by adjusting the price as long as it appraises. It really did work. And most of the sales that go through now that I see are still going that way, where the seller is giving a compensation to the other side. Because if they didn't, they would, what that buyer offers would probably be a larger delta than the BAC itself, if they had to pay their own broker, I suspect.
Certainly could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, Kurt, I want to go back to me, this whole thing with you have to have a buyer agreement to show a house. I mean, I get once you have agency, and that's the thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around is, when does it become agency and when are you allowed to show without it? Like, for example, open house. Okay, you're in an open house. Do you really need everybody to sign something to come in? Or here's another scenario. Okay, every once in a great while, this has happened a few times over my career. I'll be at a buddy's house, and he'll be like, "Hey, my neighbor next door's the house is vacant. They're selling it. I've never been inside. Can we go see it?" And I'll make a couple quick phone calls. follow some instructions, and take him inside. Is that my buyer? Do I have to sign something with him? I just wonder, and you can, those are a couple extreme examples, but there's varying shades of things less than that. Now, for example, what if my neighbor then goes, I love this house, I want to buy it. Did I do something wrong then?
Right. So let me, and keep in mind, I'm doing my best to reiterate what NAR is teaching me. Let me handle the first one. There's three scenarios there. The first one, pretty slam dunk answer. If you're doing an open house, no, you're working for the seller at that point. You are not working for a buyer. So if you're working for the seller, you don't need any buyer broker agreement. You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
The second scenario, you've got a buddy who's like, look, I've never seen the inside of my house. I wish I could see it. If you're letting someone into a house, yup, that's it. If you're entering the home, you have to have some sort of buyer broker agreement.
Even though it's understood that he's not really a buyer?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You have to have some sort of agreement there, which is where you start getting into that weird, okay, I'll just have a touring agreement. Like they're not going to buy anything and they're just going to show the house in an attempt to gather some sort of loyalty. Maybe they'll use me in the future. You just have to have some sort of agreement. We don't care what it's called or what it is.
So that's what Zillow's saying. Is Zillow's calling their touring agreement, you are not a buyer, you are not buying, but I'm going to take you and show you houses. However, where that runs afoul is if suddenly they want to buy something.
Yeah, then you need another agreement.
Okay. And how's NAR viewing that?
NAR is relatively moot. They are not going to mandate what your agreements say or how they are to be written, or whether there's compensation involved or anything like that. Which does lead me to the third scenario in which you said there's a myriad of different points in which you might be providing what are called ministerial acts, or you might just be, doing stuff. Is that
just looking at houses and maybe your spouse is with you, or, somebody's with you. You're just touring homes.
The best answer that I've heard in that situation is pretty simple. Do you expect to get paid? If at some point you expect to get paid, then you better have a buyer agreement. If you don't expect to get paid, then you better have something, some form of agreement, like something where everyone agrees what's going on right now. I understand. I'm the buyer, but I'm ignorant to this process. At least I know what's happening in this step right here. That's the best answer that I've heard so far, is everyone needs to be asking themselves, do you expect to get paid? If so, get it in writing right now.
Is it the advice of RMLS? Let's say someone wants to see a house and you break out this buyer rep agreement that they keep modifying it. It could be 3 pages now for all I know. But, we're all brought up to, don't sign anything. Don't sign anything. And so what if you present it and there's like, nah, I don't want to sign that. I just want to see this house. Can we not show them the house if they don't sign it? Or can we show it to them knowing that if they want to buy it, we're deficient on what they really do need to sign from a buyer rep standpoint?
Yeah, so I kind of expected that question, and I'm going to do the lame answer, which is that I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not your lawyer. So I would get the advice of legal counsel in that case, because RMLS we're not going to mandate any of that portion of it. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you have a written buyer agreement when you're supposed to. We're not experts on when that is or why that is or how it's mandated. You just have to have some sort of agreement.
I'm gonna throw another wrinkle in there. I mean, you could have a buyer agreement with a buyer, and I'm not advocating for this, please, by any stretch, but you could have one for $1.
Yep.
And then when they find a house that they like, you could modify it and then take it to an amount and go, okay, I'm going to write an offer and let's try to get you this. Because there's nothing that says your buyer agreement is forever lasting and can never be modified. There's nothing that states that. And there will be modifications. And sometimes those modifications might go down.
Right.
You might have a buyer agreement that says a percentage. You make an offer and the seller says, no, I'm not going to do it. Deal's looking squirrely, like it's going to fall apart, and the agent just goes, "Look, I'll drop my percentage. Let's modify our agreement." I mean, that's probably going to happen.
You can always renegotiate your agreement with your customers like that.
No different than a listing contract. Yeah.
I mean, even if your agreement says we're never going to change this, you could still have an addendum that says, even though we said that, we're still going to change. So,
yeah.
You know, another question was brought up. Let's say you have a full buyer rep, you know, the real deal with the buyer. You're leaving to go to Maui for 2 weeks. How do you amend that and to put another person in charge for the absence when you're on vacation? They need their own buyer rep as well, I suspect.
yeah, I would assume that there would be some form of agreement between you, some sort of three-way agreement, I would assume. But again, that's not going to be something that RMLS administers. We're going to administer that something exists.
Do you think you guys will ever ask to see it?
Let's say that we did. That was going to be my question. Let's say that I did. What do I know? I don't know if the signatures are valid. I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea. We just need to make sure that you understand the importance of it and that you're administering it. Like, I can't imagine that we get ourselves in the middle of legal disputes between you and your clients. That doesn't make any sense. So, and really, honestly, who else would be involved? If it's an agreement between you and your client, the only other way someone else gets involved is in Joe's suggestion, where we've got, you're taking a trip to Maui and you've got some third party involved. Still has nothing to do with the multiple listing service. That's between you, ostensibly your principal broker, and your client, perhaps your lawyer.
Well, what's great about this is they stripped RMLS of having this binding contract that any broker that shows a house, whatever it says, you're guaranteed, you don't have to fight.
Right.
They took that away. So now you could sit back and say, not my rodeo, not my clowns. Right?
Yeah.
Because all this stuff is going to come up and you're like, we have no jurisdiction here. That was part of the settlement. So you're on your own.
Not only do we not have jurisdiction, we've been told to not have anything to do with that portion of it. Like, we have to be completely agnostic when it comes to commissions. We have nothing to do with it. We only have to make sure that you have an agreement. An agreement. I don't care what it says.
Mm-hmm. You guys, so all of our listing contracts are on RMLS forms. Do you guys never ask to see listing contracts, do you? Has there ever been a time?
In rare situations, if there's a hearing, for instance, or there's some sort of rules violation, we do it every now and then, but certainly not by a matter of practice. And it's outrageously rare.
Yeah, I would think so. Hey, there's been another question that's come up recently. Do you think, so currently, when we close out a transaction, it's pretty commonplace. We'll put in the private comments that there was a concession for closing costs or rate buy down or whatever. It was a concession. Do you foresee any scenario where it would be allowed or done what the BAC was after the fact?
Yeah, that was one of the first questions that MLSs around the country started asking, and the answer was no. Even though there are some MLSs who still plan on going that route, it was very clear, no, that is a bastardization of the rule. The MLSs are supposed to stay out of commissions altogether. So by simply, everyone pretends, okay, nothing changed. Let's all just call that concessions and move on with our lives. The DOJ is waiting for that. Like, that's exactly the type of shenanigans they're waiting for.
Even just calling it a lump sum concessions. In other words, for example, if there's $5,000 in closing costs and $10,000 in commissions, saying $15,000 in concessions, that is off the table. So will we still be able to put the old concessions in? Will we still be able to put the actual true closing costs?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay.
And the rest of it, I don't know how it shakes out, because now you're getting into a gray area that neither NAR nor the Department of Justice have really waded into yet. And that is, what happens after the sale? Are we allowed to record any of that information in the listing that might be used by, let's say, an appraiser in the future? We don't know. That's gray area. No one's giving us any guidance on that right now. So we'll We'll have to see. I mean, right now the edict is it's pretty straightforward. We're not supposed to have anything to do with compensation at all. But after the sale, that's not. I mean, that avoids all of the assertion that the multiple listing service by accident was driving up rates. If it's done after the sale, that seems to be benign to me. But again, gray area. We don't know the answer to that.
I suppose maybe the argument would be from their vantage point, and I'm not saying I'm on their side, but the argument would be like agents could pull up MLS and show their sellers, and so
right,
hey, or their buyers, like, look, they were paying this, Here, I pulled five of your neighbors' houses, and they all paid this, so that would be the argument, I think.
That's exactly why I say it's a gray area, because there is a situation, the one you just described. There is a situation in which, that could turn into a real mess. Now we've got a problem. Now the MLS is once again having a hand in that.
Yeah.
There's another gray area that I read about, and maybe you could shed light on it. A seller can put in remarks that seller is willing to give some sort of incentive, a 2-1 rate buy down or something, but it couldn't be earmarked for commission. And whoever the buyer is, they would all get exactly that. It would be a definite number, and you needed to honor it regardless of who came in and who got paid by who. That kind of sounds like, well, we're not putting the BAC, but we're just going to kind of,
right,
an incentive, roughly 2.25, 2.5, whatever of the, hey, here's our incentive. How does that work? Isn't that pretty much just the same thing?
I mean, yes and no. So NAR has been pretty clear that all other incentives and everything are separate from this. This is specifically about the commission. However, you yourself pointed out, look, if as a practice, this starts to look and feel like a frog, the DOJ is going to call it a frog. And that's exactly what they're looking for. Everyone's going to have eyes on all of this. And the reason I say that is, let's just face facts. Like when NAR went into this settlement, there were 21 copycat lawsuits. So you had the big three that were already existed, and then 21 copycats right after that. We're under a microscope. Everyone is looking for an opportunity to make some money here. So anytime you find a situation, and I don't care if it's incentives or if it's the list price or if we start doing a concessions field, anything that starts to look and sound like the old system is going to get scrutiny. We're going to get phone calls, we're going to get letters, we're going to get emails, and eventually there will be lawsuits. So our job is to keep us as far away from lawsuits as we possibly can, because our job is to protect your money. You pay for the MLS to keep it up and running, and we got to keep you guys sound. So anytime we find anything that starts to look like the old system, we're going to be very nervous.
But it doesn't make sense to me that the BAC goes away in RMLS. However, you could put it on your signpost, you could put it on your flyer, you could put it in a postcard around the neighborhood, you could put it on your social media, you could put it everywhere but RMLS. Like, what is that solving? I mean, does that solve anything?
It does, in that
it's not as binding. I would say it's not as binding.
Yeah.
If you put BAC percentage, any percentage on your flyer, and then I make an offer and I'm off asking price, and I go, hey, where's my 2% or whatever? That wasn't a binding place. The MLS was a binding place. Like they were ready to roll up their sleeves and help you get your commission off the sales price. Down to, I remember, a common practice was agents would be like, well, there was seller concessions. I should get a BAC on that. And RMLS's rules were, yes, you do, unless you otherwise agree. So there was a body that was governing and making sure you got your BAC. That's what's going to be different. In the future, it's kind of going to be the Wild West. where you're going to say, well, I'm going to say, well, Joe, you had on your flyer that I could get X percentage. And you're going to go, well, that was on a full price offer. You didn't make a full price offer.
Right.
And I'm going to have no teeth.
Still negotiable, even advertised. I mean, they have to come in with a great offer, right? And again, it's not us, the individuals, it's our clients. And I guess we're calling customers clients now as well. So it's our clients. Traditionally, the sellers of our listing were our clients and the buyers were our customers. But that verbiage is changing to they're all clients because I guess it makes us sound more professional. I don't know why they did that change.
I mean, you got to have an agreement now. So
yeah.
So what else are you guys working on? What else do you have in queue right now that keeps you up at night?
So honestly, we have the settlement and the related tasks that go along with that, which is significantly larger than anyone really understands. But without getting into the weeds, just take my word for it. It's outrageously complicated, which has put everything else a little bit on hold, although not bad.
Oh, no, I know that. And keep on the settlement. I wasn't trying to ask what you're doing beyond that. I'm sure there's very little else beyond that you're doing.
Well, actually, there is a lot. We still are improving aligned showings, the showings product, and we continue to get feedback on that. As you know, that's the combined efforts of 6 different MLSs at this point. So we're it's a weird thing where we're weighing input from different areas. Like this area is on fire about this, but no one cares over here in Oregon.
Interesting.
We also have the rewrite of RMLS Web is off the ground and running. We will have what we like to call a minimally viable product by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And we completely blank canvassed it. We just started over. And we engaged a firm out of New York who has never worked in real estate before. And we did that on purpose because we wanted people to look at an MLS system and we wanted those to be people that had never done a CMA or they had never set up a prospect. They didn't know how things worked in real estate, but they knew how things worked at Apple and they knew how things worked at Google. And they had done, these people had done everything from car dealerships to, Weyerhaeuser's website and crazy stuff like that. And so if you got someone who wasn't a part of the industry and they looked at an MLS system, they did exactly what we hoped they would do. They came in, they did a huge analysis, and then they came back and said, wow, you guys suck. You guys do everything really weird. Now, let me be perfectly clear about one thing. There are MLS systems for sale out there that are based on RMLS Web. We are not different from MLS systems around the country. A lot of the systems, if you were to look at Matrix, it's strikingly similar to RMLS Web. Now, every system is different. Flex is different. Rapatoni is different. They're all different. But we all suffer from the same thing, and that is we've all been drinking from the same trough from the beginning of time. And when that happens, you all end up looking and feeling like each other. This is what a prospect is. This is what a saved search is. However, our new product will be strikingly different. And that is going to be exciting. It's going to be good in a good way. But it's also going to mean there will be a period of time that I lovingly refer to as torches and pitchforks, where people are going to be angry because it's going to look different, it's going to feel different, and it's going to be change. Just like the settlement, change something.
When is this, Kurt? This sounds like a busy 2024 for you.
Yeah, this is a big one. So we, like I said, and I cannot stress this enough, maybe by the beginning of next year, we will have what we call a minimally viable product. And when I say minimally viable product, I mean, you'll be able to do a search. This isn't a replacement yet. This will be something that will be proof of concept.
For you guys on the backside, nothing we'll interface with.
We will be holding some user forums and some focus groups. So there will probably be a chance that a lot of people that will be asked, take a look at it, tell us just how angry it makes you. But that's exactly what we're looking for, is like, how much of a disruption is this? And to a certain extent, the bigger the disruption, the better, because that means we're not stepping on other people's intellectual property. Like, that's one of the things nobody ever seems to understand about building RMLS Web. We're surrounded by landmines. We can't do a lot of the things because people have copyrighted it, or they have some sort of, like legal infringement that we can't do that. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a blast. And I'm really looking forward to it, but we're really hoping to start getting some eyes on the new product by the first quarter of next year.
Interesting. That's a big undertaking. Is this one of the biggest undertakings ever?
I would say this is the largest undertaking, because even when we built RMLS Web the first time, we purchased the code from home seekers. So it was all buggy, trashy, goofy code. It was already written, and we were just we spent years trying to improve it and get it to run. This is just like clear sky creation from the ground.
Building the chassis from the ground up.
Starting
Not
with
just, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're doing design first this time. So we don't start writing the code until the design is completely finished, which is a new approach for us.
I've heard people don't like RMLS from a kind of a clunky, not intuitive standpoint, and especially on the go mobile standpoint. I mean, it's all I've ever known. MLS was formed the year I got into real estate. And, there's a lot of information there. So to make it with great big icons and cartoony, it might make it easier, but sometimes you don't want easy. You want to like roll up your sleeves and just dive into the information.
Right. Yeah.
And if you want the, frustrated people to come at you with torches, go for the people who have low volume, who traditionally don't learn anything new.
Right.
They want to sit down and intuitively just know how it operates, even though they vested no time and no energy and no training whatsoever. I guarantee you, everyone will be pissed off in that class.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be great.
You know what? I go to bed every night and I'm like, please, Kurt, buy all the MLSs so I don't have to be part of Flex at the coast and WV in Salem and, the Washington one and Bend. And it's like, you kind of look at it, it's like, it just infuriates you because it's like, okay, well, I got something at the beach, so now I have to join the stinking Flex.
Right. Yeah.
And then you have the beach people that say, well, hey, I'm going to put it in Flex, but to get full exposure, I also have to put it in RMLS.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I think you guys are big and bad enough that you can just kind of say, hey, screw Flex. Everyone goes to RMLS. And all of the coast could just say, you know what? We're using RMLS. We're not going to pay 2 MLSs. RMLS does it better. We're just going to go to one. It would make my life easier for the people licensed in the entire state of Oregon or the entire state of Washington or both, that your MLS covers the entire state, comprehensively. And there aren't little side hustles of, this guy in Salem who doesn't want to spring for RMLS. He only wants to be in the WV. And so they're not getting the full exposure. You're not getting all the full listings. Why can't we have one central MLS that does it?
So it's a different answer in every area. I would hearken back to 1991 when the company was formed and you were starting. We only served the Portland metro area. That was it. We served 5 counties, something like that. And that has been the pitch ever since. Like, I can remember in 1998, I went down to Coos Bay, and Coos Bay was paying 4 MLSs at the time. And we just had a meeting at one of the casinos and said, what if you just had one? Like, what if we just offered you MLS services? Yeah, sure, we're way up in Portland, but what if we did that? And eventually it worked. and then Eugene and Roseburg and Hood River, and a great time of expansion started. And what's left are areas that, for one reason or another, do not wish to join the regional multiple listing service. Willamette Valley is a perfect example of that, in that they do not require realtor membership. So you don't have to belong to the local, state, and national association in order to get into the MLS.
Well, that's changed now.
Not that I've heard of.
Didn't the lawsuit change that they can't force, MLSs can't force being an NAR member?
No, had nothing. The settlement had nothing to do with that.
Oh, why did I remember that being in there? That was no?
Nope.
Okay.
That isn't even a part of the conversation, because there's still something like 80% of MLSs in this country are, well, way more than 80% are owned by realtor associations. You still have 67% of MLSs that are one association owning one MLS, and that's it. It's a pillar. Bend would be an example of that, where they have the Association of Realtors owns the MLS in that area. That's it. Whereas RMLS, we are regional. So we have 3 associations that own us, but we serve 19.
And I'm not knocking, the coast or Salem or anything, but instead of paying all these different entities, why don't we use that money and that energy and put it all in one central MLS? Like, if I'm looking for a car, I want to go to one place and look for a car. I don't want to have to say, oh, hey, I got to go here, and now I got to go over to, this other website and this other website. I just want one central thing of the MLS that does it best. And from what I've seen, and I'm not up on some of the other MLSs because I've kind of been staying close, but you could have 10 or 15 PDFs now that you could upload, and 48 high-res photos and 3 virtual tours. And I mean, if one was so inclined and had 2,000 pages to share, you have the room to upload that. You might have to shrink it or something, but I mean, it's very robust in my opinion, and it's does everything we want it to do. We can send out searches, we can save contacts, we could watch houses. That was a big deal. There isn't anything MLS doesn't do that I would want it to do, except for if I put in the tax ID and have AI fill out the whole listing, so we have to even do less.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, that's where we're headed, right? And it's not just RMLS, that's where every single MLS is headed. But then you get some weird esoteric conversations as well, which I love to have. Well, where else could we pull that from? Like, does it have to be from the tax record only? Is there some rule that says we couldn't also, in a different color, give you information from, say, previous listings or anything else, where you're still the listing agent, you're still going to have to approve this stuff, but we could bring in all kinds of information from other websites, anything. It'd be kind of cool. It'd be very futuristic. But again, as a listing agent, you'd have to say, yes, in fact, this house does have 7 bedrooms. That isn't just made up by Homes and Garden Magazine or wherever we found it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Kurt, since we're talking about functionality of RMLS, you guys went from not allowing a lot of characters in public and private comments to allowing pretty much anything, right?
Yeah, we expanded that greatly.
Yeah. I like that you expanded it. I wonder if you went too far. Sometimes I'm printing some of these reports and there's like paragraphs a foot long.
Yeah, so there's 2 things I want to say real quick, and that is that expansion was sort of the confluence of 2 mindsets. One, we don't decide, like staff at RMLS doesn't decide how many characters go in those fields. That's the forms committee. So a committee made up of working realtors sits down every year and makes those decisions. And for umpteen bazillion years, they told us, no, those remarks can't be too long. And one of the reasons, amongst others, was, look, I don't want to print 7 pages when I print this thing out.
I know a lot of people are printing less, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
That's what I was just going to say. When I say a confluence of 2 ideas, it's also the just sort of the realization that what you get on the screen is what you get. Like we're no longer designing for printouts.
Yeah.
Fewer and fewer people are printing out. So what happened is at some point we passed some sort of important milestone, and the committee said, you know what, ollie oxen free. Let's open it up to whatever it is. And I don't know what the limit is now, but it's not unlimited.
I don't think it comes into play very often.
No, it does come into play. It just doesn't come into play very often. It's quite a high limit.
It was quite a change. And don't get me wrong. I remember we all used to play that game where we try to, got to squeeze in another word or two. Let's take a space. Let's take a period out. Let's change without to be W/O.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You don't have to play that game anymore, but
no.
And I appreciate that.
You also don't have to use all 2,000.
Yeah. But now we've got the flip side where I've got people calling me saying, are you kidding me? Like, I don't have time to read this. Like, this is a novel inside of a listing. Well, it's sort of the beauty of building your own system. Like, we get to do whatever it is you guys tell us to do. And sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not. But sometimes you got to try this stuff and see what happens too. And I think the world had changed enough. We decided, look, we don't have to do this for paper anymore. That's ridiculous. Let's go ahead and do what we can.
Yeah. I also think 48 photos is plenty, by the way.
You know what? When we were at 32, long time ago, in fact, before we went to 32, I remember the committee met for years and years and years. And the quote that I heard, by the way, I don't sit in on these committee meetings, but the quote that I heard coming out of that over and over and over again was, I don't need any more pictures of the toilet. Like, that's the one thing I don't need is we've got plenty of photos. We don't need any more. And then, of course, things changed and we went up to the number we have now. But it's plenty. Like, at some point, you get it. And I'm always trying to think 5-10 years in the future. At some point, photos will be passé. It'll all be 3D tours and virtual walkthroughs. And, you'll say, my God, what did people used to do with 99 photos? Some MLSs do allow 99 photos. And guess what? Some people fill up 99 photos.
We'll have these goggles that let us walk around in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe's working on that right now.
Oh, everyone's working on it.
That's funny.
That's exciting stuff. Was there anything else? I'm just back to Washington, D.C. Was there anything else? I mean, one question I asked Jeff, and I'm curious your take. What was the temperature in the room? I mean, was there a feeling of being a little deflated, down, bummed out, or what did you feel the energy was of NAR and all the happenings there?
I'm not entirely certain that I can speak to anything other than the MLS community. And I think there was sort of a two-pronged takeaway, is that one, we can do this. Like, I get it. Well, first of all, we're not monsters. We weren't doing anything wrong on purpose. We were only doing exactly what we had been told to do for over 100 years. But I also felt there was a little bit of, and I'm not sure what the right word to use is, probably consternation, where we don't actually have an arrangement with the National Association of Realtors. Sure, our owners do in some cases, but a lot of people that were in that room don't, like the broker-owned MLSs, for instance, they don't actually have any arrangement with the National Association of Realtors. It felt, I think consternation is probably the right word, a little bit more of concern, where you entered into a settlement ostensibly with the Department of Justice, although at this point it's just Ketchmark and his cronies. But you entered into an agreement and you made everything our problem. We don't even know you. Like, we don't, you're not the National Association of Multiple Listing Services, which we have been told in the past when we've asked for help. There's just a little bit of like, the hell did we do wrong? Yeah.
No, that's across our industry. I mean, that's what's so weird about this is, like, if I've talked, to some of our people within our company and organization, like, if we could go back in a time machine and go back 10 years and go, oh my gosh, there's going to be a big lawsuit and a bunch of people are going to get in trouble. Let's avoid that. What would we have done?
And honestly, what could we have done?
stop using RMLS and go out of business that month?
Right.
I mean,
yeah. I'm not sure that if I've thought, by the way, that thought exercise that you've done, I do that every night as I'm falling asleep. What could we have done? Even way back in 1991, what could we have done? We couldn't have done anything because we would have had to do it voluntarily, and no one would do this voluntarily.
No.
This is something that has to be forced down your throat. This type of change. I couldn't have convinced anyone to do this, even if I'd known it was coming.
Yeah. At the same time, lawsuits are flying around and brokerages are writing checks and like they did something wrong. And it's
Right.
just it's mind-boggling. It's just
Absolutely mind-boggling.
yeah.
On the other hand, it's a bit of a blessing. Like if this could be a lot worse. And we could be in a situation where, I mean, of the 21 copycat lawsuits, we could have had 21 of them here in Oregon. And all of our brokers and the MLS and the state association could have all been locked in legal battles. Like this could be way worse. So
Yeah.
it's a blessing that we didn't get there, but it does feel a little awkward and weird.
We chalk it up to it's a new year, different bullshit, basically.
Yes.
And people absolutely hate change. I don't hate change necessarily, but some people absolutely do. And so you have two groups. You have the, meet chaos with resistance, learn, adapt, overcome, flourish, right? And then you have the people that just want to like sit and bitch about everything, not get smarter, just bitch about what's happening, bitch about change. And then they're working at, wherever, not in real estate anymore. And I think some of the attrition, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if 20% or 30%, I don't know what the numbers are, whatever percentage left makes the core people who are still here more professional, you would suspect. How many people have left since this was announced?
Well, or even in the last couple of years with a challenging market, have you noticed a user base drop?
Oh, yes. Yeah. We went from a high last year, a little bit more than a year ago. We went from a high of about 16,500 subscribers. We're down to 14,500 now. So we're down noticeably, but that trend isn't reversing. Like we are going to have more people leave the industry over the next few years, which to be perfectly honest, I think is healthy. There's an ebb and flow that happens in any area with a number of realtors. And, we've had people entering this industry for more than a decade now. And that seems to be tailing off now.
Yeah.
We had been talking about it for quite some time. It didn't take us by surprise. We've been budgeting for it erroneously for at least 3 years, if not 4. And Lawrence Yun from the National Association of Realtors has basically asserted over and over and over again, this is going to be slow. Like people are going to leave the industry, but it's going to be a slow retreat. That may have changed with the settlement. I don't know. I'm not sure if the settlement is even resonating with your average consumer or your, brand new realtor. I don't know to what extent it's even being exposed. But we'll see. We'll see if it has any effect. It's far too early to tell right now.
Yeah, definitely a double whammy for the agents, for the industry. I mean, to have a challenged market, we're 2 years into mortgage rates being up. We're past 2 years. And then to have this come, after our lowest number of transactions in a year since 1995 nationally, to have that happen right on the tail end of that, it's a lot. It's a lot, especially, and I would even say to Joe's point, to psyche, to morale, I think early retirement is a word that comes to mind. Just people just like, oh, this isn't fun anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of what I've called shooting fish in a barrel that's super easy and super fun. But there might be a bunch of people that are like, I just don't want to do it again. Like I did the fight, I don't want to fight again.
Yeah.
It could also be the flip side, the other end of the career where it's like, look, this was supposed to be easy and this feels an awful lot like work to me. I'm not doing this another year.
Yeah. Yeah. Kurt, I know you guys are all over the place. How many of those users are in the greater metro area? And feel free to say Vancouver, Portland side, but I mean, or combine them. I'm just curious. Is it around 11,000, 12,000?
Let's see. We got, let's say 7,000 plus at PMAR. Let's say 1,500 or so at EMAR and 1,500. So we got about 3,000. So about 10,000.
10,000. Okay.
Portland metro area. I'm doing some rough math there. Give me
no. That's
but
close.
I'd say that's about right. So we get about 4,500, of which a large portion is going to be Eugene. They've probably 1,500-ish, 1,200. And then the rest are spread out, Brookings and Hermiston and Hood River and, Salem.
Have you guys analyzed, and I know you well enough to know you probably have, have you analyzed, like, of the 2,000 that left, is it pretty evenly spread out, or is it more, does Portland feel a bigger chunk of that, or?
It's pretty evenly spread out percentage-wise. So, of course, the most people are leaving the Portland metro area, but then you would expect that.
Yeah.
But I will say we are looking right now to find anything interesting in the people that are leaving. Did they all, like the last time this happened, we had a large downturn one year and they had all joined in the same year. Like 80% of them had joined like 7 years earlier. And so it was fun to find, like, what is it that they all have in common? We haven't found that yet. It's all over the map. It's everyone. But then again, it's also pretty, like, we're right at the beginning of this. We'll see maybe at the end of next year, maybe a little bit more than that, we'll see some real big drop-offs and we'll start seeing some numbers that we can, sort of shake a stick at and get some real statistics out of. I will be interested to see how many, because I can even break them down into, is it mostly Gen X that's leaving? Is it mostly baby boomers? It would be fun to look at that and see.
Survey them, whenever they want to cancel their subscription, survey them. And are you moving out of state? Are you retiring? Are you getting out of the business altogether? It would be fascinating to know.
Yeah, the last time we did this, we didn't survey people, but we knew from simply economics and statistics that people were leaving real estate and going back to the career that they had left in order to get here, be that hospitality or middle management or whatever it was. And it was fascinating to hear sort of anecdotally, everyone we were talking to were like, yep, that's what's happening. All right. So we'll see. This time, every single downturn is different, and this one will have a unique fingerprint as well.
Absolutely. Well, Kurt, this is great. Thank you. Thanks for your patience early on as we battled through some struggles to get our technology working. And you delivered, as you always do, with a bunch of insights that are very interesting to our listeners and to us. Any final words, Joe or Kurt?
I thought it was great. We kind of heard what we expected to hear, and hopefully keeping these conversations. We're all like sick of NAR and buyer rep agreements. We've been force-fed that for a really long time. However, there's still a thirst out there to hear it over and over and over again until they're comfortable with it, right? And I think it's very important. And you're a statistics guy and a numbers guy, and you have a couple different insights that we don't really hear on the other panels that we're part of. So it's always great to have you here. And I always like when you drop little sneak peeks on what might be coming in RMLS, that they heard it here first, so I think it's great.
Well, I think the future is quite rosy, and I think we've got an awful lot to look forward to. Yeah, there's some change coming, but I think it's going to be great in the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Keep fighting the fine fight on our behalf. Kurt, thank you for handling what you're doing there, and we're excited to see the new rollout next year, potentially.
Well, thanks both of you. It's been a blast.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Portland Real Estate Podcast, Oregon and Washington's #1 show for cutting-edge real estate discussions. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to the members of Masters in Real Estate, a private and exclusive Facebook group, and the #1 source for all real estate topics. Thanks for being there, gang. I love you. Finally, I want to thank our faithful listeners. Without an audience, we're just two guys talking to each other. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so the new episodes automatically come to you. Make it great.